You've lost faith in your ability to affect change. And I want to speak you through a new way to think about it. I'm seeing a person ripping up pieces of paper in almost a tantrum, and the feeling behind it is exasperation, in a sense that every action you take is met with failure, and there's a feeling that your manifestation capacity is faulty. This may be a point in your journey or your path where you're actually ready to reintegrate the willful force aspect of your behavior. The sense I get is that the desperation you feel might actually be because you have constrained your beliefs around how you're allowed to manifest. Because of all the spiritual education we take on, you can start to believe that if the universe isn't forthrightly displaying encouragement and confirmation around an action that you either think you should take, or you think you want to take, or you really do want to take, then we start to doubt it because it seems egoic or almost forbidden to just simply do things the way that regular people do things, that is through repetition and maybe even force. For instance, you can manifest a car through pure law of attraction and sheer imagination, or you can manifest a car by paying for it and working for the money. And in terms of logic and gravity and systems of belief and time, sometimes it's more efficient to do things the traditional way that the average person does them in order to acquire what it is you want. This is your confirmation that it's completely okay to do that. And at a certain point in your journey, perhaps that signals your reintegration back into the world. In the previous reading, I spoke about the fact that you are healed and you don't need to wait before you can start acting. And there's a similarity in this message, which is that all of the doubts and the feelings that you need to be entirely in alignment for something to work, that comes more out of a fear because of how you've been punished every time for everything that you tried before. And the sense that I'm getting is that this shredding bow through all of these failed attempts actually deepens your understanding of what you truly want, because maybe the prior attempts you made had an inkling of this contraction or fear that this is what the universe or what spirit or an aligned future version of you wants you to do, rather than what you instinctively want to do. The fact is, you can do something that spirit doesn't want you to do through repetition and force, and you can garner results in that. It feels like, as much as this is uncomfortable to hear, it's your own subconscious mind creating the failures because the action is something you can't commit to in the long term. And deep down you know that that you don't really want to do this thing. And it's unfair because other people get to thrive and succeed and manifest inside of misaligned action. But for you, it's something different. For whatever reason, you're aligned with truth. And so even the slightest deviation from what you truly feel inside is going to erupt into chaos. There's another aspect to this message which is also quite blunt, and that is, if there's something you've been trying to create in the world and you're not seeing success, have you actually tried everything? Have you actually, say you're doing something through social media online, if you're honest with yourself, have you done the whole shameless promotion, 2 TikToks a day for 90 days? Have you contacted every person that you possibly could and reached out for that particular exposure that you need? This is the part that we often forget once we get entrenched inside of a spiritual process, because you think that these things should appear in your reality, right? If this is an aligned action, the audience will just come. But sometimes you have to prove it to yourself and to the algorithm of life by putting your whole faith and action and shamelessness into something. And I understand if your previous actions, right, the shredding of the paper from the visual earlier, genuinely did feel like full-bodied attempts at shamelessness. And if that is the case, then what you might discover you're learning is through every failed attempt, you release a layer of shame that you're holding on to, until you start to find this kind of giving up or a sense of relief from a load that you've been carrying your entire life. And maybe that was the whole reason for the failure, to experience this subtle dropping of tension and weight. If you just sink into your body around these failures, it's usually the mind that's so concerned about how you're being seen. You know, everybody else's opinion of you amplifies the feeling of shame and vulnerability. But if it's just you, and if no one could actually see you experiencing these failures, would they be so bad? You're strong and resilient. And resilience is currency in the spirit world. Every time that you fall down and you get back up again, you get back up stronger. And nothing can destroy a person who continually gets up. And that's the one thing that we do have as humans. Even if you're not seeing rewards yet for your attempts, there is a rich, endless sense of self-reward that comes from witnessing yourself continually getting up again. And eventually, you do this enough times and you stop feeling spite towards the people who didn't help you or the people who watched you fall. And you start to feel this immense reckoning with yourself that you were the one to heal and you didn't need anybody else. This is not to encourage hyper-independence, but wholeness and the sense of knowing what you're capable of and trusting yourself to be able to get up again, because the reticence or the avoidance of moving forward and trying again feels more to be about the fear of being seen trying again than it does about the genuine spiritual exhaustion of trying again. And if you drop the sense of being watched trying, then you might actually find that there is an engine that comes from this resilience and this trust in yourself, knowing that you continually get up every time you fall down. And if you fall down again, you will get up again. And it's a muscle and it's an experiential strength. It doesn't have to be a lesson, you know. Every failure doesn't have to be a lesson. It can genuinely feel like shit. It can be a grindstone, right? The stone that you sharpen your sword on. And before you know it, you have the shiniest, sharpest sword in the town, but you store it sheathed, so nobody sees it until it gets used for the one thing it's required for. And that's coming. There's no doubt that that is coming. And for those of us who experience life in this exposing, shredded way, we will ultimately be the ones whose swords are sharpened. And you know that to be true. It's just a feeling inside that this will come in handy one day. But it's not glamorous. But it will feel glamorous internally eventually. And now the image of you ripping up the pieces of paper to start again, it's morphing into an image of you putting the shredded pieces back together into the form of a map. And whilst I said it doesn't have to be about lessons, you also know that every time you fail, there is some kind of deep thread of learning that points you in the next direction. And maybe it's possible that you finally landed at a whole map of what's next. I'm not going to tell you, like most tarot readers, that the next thing you do is going to be the big success and you're going to be a millionaire and everybody's going to love you and you're going to be famous. And that sucks that I won't tell you that. But I am being shown the image of a map in completion where all the pieces are back together again and you can see the zoomed out picture clearly. Maybe you don't know where to go on the map, but the map is whole. And that marks an important signpost in your journey. So that is to say that the honest, precise truth of your situation is that you are ready to move forward, and the next action you take will be taken from a place of wholeness and from the biggest picture that you can possibly conceive. And it seems that there is a new perspective or a new point of initiation or engine in your body from where you're choosing to take action. And so long as you move from that, rather than the shame and the fear of how this appears, and considering that willful force is genuinely permitted, then you are ready to move forward. And that's your message for today. So thank you for being here. Leave a comment, subscribe, and be brave.